Yeah, man, it was terrible. I knew I was madly in love with my wife. The minute I saw her, it was kind of love at first sight. But getting to the altar was so tough.
For decades, Jeff Bridges was Hollywood's calmest storm. He smiled when others shouted. He floated through fame while others sank in it. Fans believed they knew him. The dude from The Big Lebowski wasn't just a role. It was a reflection, or so it seemed. But what if it wasn't? What if that calm was a performance too? Now, at 75, Jeff Bridges is no longer hiding. In recent interviews and reflections, he's finally spoken the words many long suspected but never heard, that behind the charm, behind the roles, behind the grin, was a man quietly drowning. He admits now that much of what the world saw was a mask, one carefully worn to survive pressure, fear, and the pain of expectation. It wasn't always peace he felt. It was confusion, fear, and the weight of pretending for too long. This isn't the story of a Hollywood star. This is the confession of a man who spent a lifetime trying to appear unshaken, only to realize that truth, not performance, is what finally set him free. And now we finally know what he was hiding all along. Jeff Bridges was born into Hollywood before he ever asked for it. His father, Lloyd Bridges, was already a recognizable name by the time Jeff took his first steps. Fame wasn't earned in Jeff's case, it was inherited. And that, he now admits, was never something he was comfortable with. From his earliest days, Jeff was surrounded by bright lights, cameras, and industry talk. While other children played outside, Jeff was learning how to hit marks and deliver lines. His first appearances weren't driven by ambition. They were guided by family obligation. His father thought he was giving Jeff a gift. What Jeff felt instead was quiet pressure. He speaks now about those early years with both affection and regret. The sets of Sea Hunt, where he acted alongside his father, were both magical and suffocating. Every smile he gave to the camera was coached. Every compliment he received felt like it belonged to someone else. He was told he was talented, but he always wondered if people said that because of his last name. That uncertainty followed him into adulthood. When he landed The Last Picture Show, his performance earned him an Oscar nomination. To the public, it was a breakout moment. To Jeff, it was confusing. He didn't know if the praise was real or just another courtesy extended to a famous son. As his career evolved, the pattern remained. He was offered complex roles, emotionally rich characters, but inside, he felt like an imposter. Even in his best moments, he doubted himself. He now admits that he never fully trusted success. Every achievement came with the fear that someone might one day pull back the curtain and reveal that he didn't belong, that he was just Lloyd Bridges' boy playing dress-up in his father's world. No one ever told him to feel that way, but no one ever told him he could stop either. His older brother, Beau, also found success as an actor. And while they shared a bond, Jeff confesses that he often compared himself to Beau. He saw Beau as more grounded, more secure. Jeff, on the other hand, floated, on sets, through roles, across award seasons, without ever planting both feet on solid ground. It created an emotional distance that he didn't understand at the time. Only now, at 75, does he see how deep that insecurity ran. It wasn't about fame. It was about identity. Who was he when the cameras weren't rolling? And did that person matter as much as the one the public loved? In interviews today, Jeff speaks differently, slower, more thoughtful. He no longer defends the past with charm. Instead, he reflects. And what he reflects on most is this. He never truly felt like the life he lived was one he chose. He was good at acting. He enjoyed storytelling, but acting, for many years, was also his disguise, a way to disappear into other people's lives, so he didn't have to face his own. He doesn't blame his father. He doesn't resent the industry, but he now sees the path he walked as one filled with silent compromises. With every role, he gave up a little more of his voice in order to meet the expectations placed on him since birth. That's why, even in his most beloved performances, there was always something withheld. A part of Jeff that stayed hidden behind the character, because if he exposed too much, the illusion might break. And back then, he wasn't ready for that. Only now, with age, with illness, with time and reflection, has Jeff Bridges begun to reclaim the life behind the legacy. When The Big Lebowski was released in 1998, it barely made a splash. Critics were divided. The box office was quiet. But over time, the film transformed into a cultural giant. And at the center of that storm was Jeff Bridges as the Dude, a laid-back robe-wearing drifter who became the symbol of effortless cool. Fans embraced him instantly. They quoted him, dressed like him, worshipped him, and Jeff played along. For years, he leaned into it. He wore the sandals, sipped the White Russians, attended Lebowski festivals. The world believed he was the Dude, and for a while, so did he. But today he admits the truth. He was never that person. Not even close. Behind that easygoing mask was a man struggling with fatigue, anxiety, and a growing disconnection from his own identity. Jeff now says that the role didn't just define him, it buried him. The Dude became an escape hatch, a way to hide from his own questions. The charm, the aloofness, the detachment, it was all a cover. A disguise for how lost he truly felt. At the time of filming, he was already drifting. His marriage, though strong, was strained by distance. His creativity was beginning to feel more like labor than joy. And in that moment of personal confusion, along came a character who didn't care, a character who floated, who avoided conflict, who accepted everything with a shrug and a smirk. Jeff poured himself into the Dude not because he related to him, but because he needed him. In interviews, he smiled and nodded. He quoted the lines. He told stories about improvising scenes, but no one asked what it cost him. No one questioned how exhausting it was to play someone so detached, while feeling so tangled inside. Jeff says now that people stopped seeing him. They only saw the myth, and he played along, afraid that stepping away from the Dude would disappoint the fans who kept his career alive. He allowed the illusion to live, while part of him quietly faded. As the years passed, the Dude became larger than life. More than a character, he became a philosophy, a lifestyle, a cultural movement. And Jeff, trapped in the center of it, began to feel like a prisoner inside his own success. He stopped talking about his fears. He rarely shared what troubled him, because the Dude wouldn't do that. The Dude didn't worry. The Dude didn't care. But Jeff did. Deeply. And the longer he stayed silent, the more lost he became. He confesses now that the applause often felt hollow, that after every appearance, after every fan interaction, he would sit in his car and feel emptier than before. Not because he didn't appreciate the love, but because he knew they weren't clapping for him. They were clapping for a version of him that never really existed. Only in recent years, after facing his own mortality, has Jeff Bridges begun to pull away from the mask. He still smiles when people call him the Dude, but now he sees it for what it was. A brilliant role, a career highlight, but also a hiding place. If you've been moved by Jeff's story so far, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. We're bringing you the untold truths behind the faces you thought you knew, and your support helps us keep digging deeper. In 2020, Jeff Bridges faced something he could no longer smile through. A routine medical check led to a diagnosis no one wants to hear: lymphoma, cancer, the kind that doesn't wait, the kind that doesn't care if you're an Oscar winner or a legend. Treatment began immediately. Chemotherapy, isolation, fatigue. But just as he started to fight one battle, another arrived. In the middle of his cancer treatment, Jeff contracted COVID-19. His body, weakened by chemo, had no defense. He was admitted to the hospital. For weeks, he could barely move. Breathing was difficult. Doctors told him it was a miracle he survived. And in those long, silent nights in a hospital bed, Jeff Bridges began to truly understand everything he had been running from. The man who once embodied calm was now at the mercy of machines and medication. He couldn't act his way out. He couldn't perform. There was no character to hide behind, no camera to edit the pain. He had to face it, all of it. Not just the illness, but the truth about the life he had lived, and the parts he had avoided. He thought about Susan, his wife of nearly 5 decades, about the moments he had missed, the times he had been present physically, but absent emotionally. He thought about his daughters, and how often he had chosen scripts over time with them. In that hospital bed, Jeff realized that survival wasn't just about healing the body. It was about repairing what had been quietly breaking inside for years. He says now that cancer didn't just attack his body. It stripped away his distractions. It forced stillness. In that stillness, he heard everything he had silenced for decades. The doubt, the guilt, the pressure to be someone he wasn't, and underneath it all, a desperate desire for connection. Real connection, not built on characters or reputation, but honesty. That desire changed everything. When Jeff returned home, he wasn't the same. He walked slower, spoke softer, laughed deeper, and for the first time in a long time, he listened more than he talked. He began writing again. Not for the public, for himself. Journals, letters, thoughts he had buried for years. He reconnected with his family, not just as Jeff Bridges, the actor, but as Jeff, the flawed, aging, deeply grateful man. He started to reflect on the life he had built. The highs that had once felt empty now had meaning. The lows that nearly broke him now made sense. He finally understood what mattered. He no longer chased roles. He no longer worried about pleasing everyone. He stopped trying to be the dude. Instead, he started learning how to be Jeff. Raw, vulnerable, honest. And in doing so, he found something he never expected to feel again: peace. This brush with death, he says, was a strange gift. It didn't take his life. It gave it back to him. Jeff Bridges no longer tries to be the person fans imagined. He stopped chasing perfection, stopped hiding behind characters, and most importantly, stopped pretending everything is fine. At 75, Jeff lives slower. He speaks with intention. He listens more. His eyes, still warm, now carry a weight that wasn't always visible in the past. In recent interviews, there's no performance, no polished answers, just quiet honesty. He admits things he never would have before. How he lived much of his life in fear of being exposed. How he questioned whether his success was truly his own, and how he kept people at a distance even when they were standing right beside him. For decades, he smiled through interviews and award shows. Now he reflects through long pauses and soft-spoken truths. He no longer needs to be the dude or the cowboy or the myth. That armor has been set down. He talks openly about mortality, about regret, about letting go of who he thought he had to be. He admits he's still learning, still healing, still reckoning with the version of himself that Hollywood helped shape, and the version he buried to make room for it. For Jeff, the journey wasn't about finding peace in fame. It was about finding peace outside of it. His family sees the difference. Friends say he feels more present, more available, more real. And fans, those who've followed him for decades, are starting to understand that the man behind the characters was never quite as calm as he appeared. The dude was an escape. The smile was a defense. The silence was self-protection. But now Jeff Bridges isn't escaping. He's not hiding. He's standing in the open, saying the words out loud that lived inside him for years. He talks about love differently now. About how long it took him to realize that true love requires presence, not just loyalty. About how Susan, his wife, stayed through all the moments he emotionally left the room. He calls her his anchor, his miracle, the reason he came back. He speaks about his daughters not as children to protect, but as adults he wants to know deeply, before time takes that chance away. He doesn't use dramatic language. He doesn't seek pity. He just tells the truth, and in that truth something powerful has happened. Jeff Bridges has found freedom, not the kind that comes with fame, but the kind that only arrives when a man finally makes peace with all the versions of himself he once had to be. He's not chasing legacy anymore. He's not trying to live up to his father. He's not comparing himself to anyone else. He's simply being Jeff. In the end, what he's admitted isn't scandalous or shocking. It's human, that the calm wasn't always real, that the fame wasn't always fulfilling, that the weight of pretending nearly broke him, and that finally, he's done pretending. What we all suspected, that even the most beloved faces carry unseen pain, has now been confirmed by the man himself. And through that confession, Jeff Bridges hasn't lost our respect.